We're just waiting for some people to gather up. For anyone who is in the chat, please let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me clearly. You should be able to. Comment on my hair because it took an unmeasurable amount of time to do. It's good to know ads are working on my channel because everything gets demonetized. So today I wanted to do something very low-key, extremely low-key actually, because I've noticed that there's been a serious lack of interest in the channel, and I'm not entirely sure why. I guess it could be because I'm moving away from such serious content. Not entirely, but for the most part, I am trying to just mix up my content just a bit more, because I don't want it to be all gloom and doom and sad and me crying every week, because honestly it's very emotionally taxing, and my whole job is already emotionally taxing, so for me to do this and then also that, it just leaves me a mess, especially when it comes to dealing with my other friends or seeing someone or listening to someone talk about their own problems. Like, I just feel me floating away on a distant lake. I just can't focus. So I think that my content definitely needs a mix up for my own personal mental health. So I wanted to branch out a little bit and maybe just answer some questions and relax a little. I am currently doing a series on my channel where I'm just going down memory lane, and we're just talking about 2010 me and where I was in 2010, and what I was doing in 2010. Because I feel like that was the happiest I've been up until I left my house, and now is the happiest I've been. And there were just some things that I was just completely obsessed with because I had very few ways of entertaining myself back then. And I just like looking back. Also, I'm turning 25 in a few weeks, and I just want to look back on the last 10 years and reminisce and be happy and see how far I've come, or if not, see how much farther I can do in the next 10 years. So we've done 2 episodes of that, and I think I will be continuing that. Though on the side, I've been doing quite a few art projects, and a lot of them I can't show because they are paid commissions, and the people who've requested those commissions have also suggested that I do not share them publicly, although I have been showing just like outlines and sketches, just so people know I'm doing things. So there's also that. And one of my Twitter mutuals, Riz the Bengali, please go follow him. He's one of my favorite people. I've met him in person. He is a personal friend as well as just someone I like talking to online. He made a suggestion on Twitter that he might join Muzmatch, and I had doubled down and I had said that I'll do it if you do it. So now I have all these Muslim dating apps. Like, it started with Muzmatch, and now there's 2 other apps. And I had filled out all of the details. I had filled out all of the details and recorded them, so I may make a video compilation of those, but obviously I haven't gotten many responses from that because I've just been fucking around. But we'll see what happens with that. But aside from those ideas, so aside from walking down memory lane, which is honestly quite finite content, I don't think I'll cover everything on to the lead up of my birthday. But I do think that it's finite. I only have 1 or 2 diaries to go through, and I want to branch out some other ideas. So the next big sort of event that I normally do a video for is coming up, is No Hijab Day, and my intention for that is to read out a speech that I wrote when I was in school. Let me just get it open here, and I'm not going to read it now because I want to keep it for then. But it was a very pensive speech, I would say. Like I really put a lot of thought into it, but it covers a lot of the arguments that I made when I a lot of the arguments that I made for the hijab when I was a Muslim, and I just want to read it out, because unlike a lot of my, what are they, like my colleagues, I guess, I'm quite artsy, and I've always been quite artsy. And the way that I wrote this speech was extremely artsy and comparative. There's a lot of statistics in there, and it's kind of like how I did the hour-long video about Muhammad's pedophilia, where I just go through all the most popular arguments, and I just, well, I wouldn't say I debunked them, but I did tear them a new asshole. That's what I kind of want to do, but with my own speech. This was a speech that I actually gave, and I guess to give you a little sneak peek, the title of the speech is The Zombie Repellent, The Importance of Hijab. And that's what I'm going to do for No Hijab Day. I don't know when I'm going to record that. I may record that in advance, because I don't know what day No Hijab Day falls on, because it's the 1st of February, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it falls on a Saturday. I think I can manage to record that on a Saturday. But then, like, 5 days after that, it's my birthday, so I don't want to do anything too strenuous on my birthday. Because people are already competing for what they want to do for my birthday, and I don't. So the thing with me and my birthday is that because I've never really celebrated it, and I don't typically celebrate my birthday, which I'm trying to change because I want to take as many opportunities as I can to celebrate things. People have been asking me, like, what do you want to do? You're turning 25, you only turn 25 once, like, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I don't know. Last year for my birthday, every year since, kind of finding a sense of emancipation, I've always spent it with Alicia. We've always gotten a cake, and we always drink. Like, that is my birthday in a nutshell. We just have some fun. But I think because I'm 25, others are treating it like it should be special, and I want to treat it like it should be special. But I'm not entirely sure what to do. I think the ideas that I've come up with so far is that I kind of want a childish birthday with, like, a piñata and stupid colored balloons and my age everywhere, and those stupid, like, cone-shaped hats. Maybe a magic performance, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not going to, like, record it. It's going to be a private event, but well, it's going to be me and my friends. But I don't know what to do, really, because I've never had the want or the need to celebrate my birthday up until now, and now that I have the opportunity to do that, I don't want to do things that I normally would do on, like, every so often on a weekend, like just go out and drink and have some fun. No, I want it to be special, but I don't know how to make it special. The other idea that I had was that I want to go to a site that's famously haunted. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in paranormal things. I'm pretty skeptical about everything, if you couldn't tell. But I want to go to a haunted site, and I want to experience what other people experience when they go to haunted sites. Like, I want to hear the noises, and I want to feel scared, and while also knowing that it's all stupid and it's all a trick of your brain, being anxious and being precautious, because that's what humans have evolved to be. That's the main cause of anxiety, is your need to survive in stressful situations. It's your need to survive. That's what anxiety basically is. And also, like, I'm currently doing a psychology degree, and there are modules on not necessarily on hauntings or parapsychology, but the psychology of people being afraid of of the dark and haunted things and alleged ghosts and things like that. So I want to know that, but I don't know if I want to do that on my birthday. The other idea I had was to just straight up go to Scotland, but it's not. I don't think it's achievable at this time of the year, mainly because money's a little tight since Christmas, because Christmas was just my break. I didn't do anything stressful, anything strenuous. I just had fun over Christmas. So, and having fun is often expensive, let's be real. And by expensive, I mean that I just like ate bad food all Christmas. Like that was my Christmas. So yeah. But in terms of other video ideas, now that I'm done rambling for the first 10 minutes of this live stream, as I do with all of my videos, there are a few things while walking down memory lane that I was able to dig up, and I don't know if I want to revive a little. So those of you who've been following my channel for a little while may know that while I was in education, I had taught myself a lot of things, especially in sixth form, or what Americans would call high school. I was teaching myself English, I was teaching myself history, and for the most part also teaching myself religious studies. Now, because I was going to an Islamic school, religious studies is a little bit, let's just say it's a little biased, because the only religion we really focused on was Islam, and we didn't really study the other religions. We kind of glossed over them. We like briefly just went into what Christianity is and what Hinduism is, because at one point in A levels you have to compare two religions, and you can't just do that when you're just studying Islam. And I also asked, is it okay if we just compare Sunni and Shia Islam, because they're basically apples and oranges. There are quite a few differences, especially with the core like beliefs. But it wouldn't fly, so we just glossed over some Christianity and said, hey, you can compare it to this. And I remember we just ended up looking at a lot of like Christian paintings and sculptures and stuff, and it was just dumb. Like, we didn't learn anything. So there was a fair bit that I needed to teach myself, and I just don't know, especially when it comes to religions, I don't know how much I could have achieved teaching myself, because I stuck to one. Like, I was very, very biased towards one religion, which is, you know, obviously Islam, and I kind of just, you know, half-baked learned it. Now, talking to other atheists and other people who have left religions, and I like cross-reference my knowledge of Christianity, and they're just like, what are you talking about? That's not, no, like, we don't believe in that anymore, but that's absolutely not true. So I definitely need to look back into that. I've been looking a little bit into philosophy, as y'all know. I haven't been catching up with it recently, but I have been like messing around with it a little bit and playing around with it a little bit. Also, if I'm putting you to sleep, I'm so sorry. This weekend has been really, really tiring. Like, tiring in a good way, because I've had so many things to do. I'm currently heading a CEMB project, and I'm doing other things for them as well. So that's taking some of my time and some of my energy. I'm making these videos. I'm on my regular 9 to 5, and I'm doing a lot of paid commission work. So this weekend hasn't, well, it's been a weekend, but because, you know, you probably noticed my hair color change. I've had a relaxing weekend, but in addition to that, it has been quite taxing, just mentally. So I'm very not, this is why I didn't want to do like a heated video. Like, I didn't want to do a video about Islam or anything anything that would make me angry. Hello Ryan, welcome to the live stream, and hello Shaolin Meditator 101. Claude, welcome. So I didn't want to do anything taxing, which is why we're doing this video. But the point that I was getting to was that in A levels, or in sixth form, or in high school, or whatever you want to call it, I had fully taught myself history, and the history that I studied was Anglo-Saxons, Vikings, the Norman invasion and the takeover of Britain, and some Henry VIII Tudor stuff. And for a lot of these topics, I had made myself lesson plans, and they're quite in-depth lesson plans. Like, I'm not going to show them off now, but they're quite in-depth lesson plans. And like the topics that I had chosen, a lot of my, well, I'll call her a mentor because she wasn't my teacher for the subject. I didn't have a teacher for the subject. My mentor for the subject was kind of like this is a really tough topic for you to study. Like, I don't think anyone else does these topics. Like, most of the people who do these topics do either the Cold War or the World Wars, or something more recent. They don't really go that far back. And I was like, well, I want to go that far back. Like, I want to go as far back will allow me to go, which in this syllabus was it was it was Vikings and Anglo-Saxons, because it was British history, and just like the end of the Roman invasion of the British Isles. So that's what I wanted to do, and so few people did this with the examining board that they didn't even release a book for it. Like, the examining board didn't have a book for it, so I had to go to the recommended list of books, and I wish I still had that book, because I love that book. It was my best friend when I was studying that subject, but I don't. I left it in my dad's house. It would be a true relic of my past, because I spent so much time combing through that and trying to learn as much as I could, and there were all these different topics, like about what they believed and how Anglo society was, and the different, like, once Christianity came in, like how it changed society, how women were treated, and then like the different war strategies and the Vikings landing and Lindisfarne. Like, it's such a pleasant time for me, because I've always been an independent learner. While I wasn't a difficult student, I was definitely a teacher's pet. I have this thing where I really lose interest in a subject if I don't like the teacher that is teaching it, or if I don't enjoy the teacher. And often with history, and I don't know why this is, because I've always said, like, I don't aspire to be a teacher. I don't think that I'd be very good at it. I don't like being in leadership positions, because of the way that my father was and a lot of members of my family are. I'm very afraid of falling into the same patterns. So I'm very afraid of being in a leadership position and being given that much power and control. And I just don't like the side of me that it brings out, and the side of me that I think I see it bringing out. So I don't see myself in a leadership position or in a teaching position, but I've always said that if I were to become a teacher, I would be a history teacher. And the exact reason that I would be a history teacher is because I would make it the most fun class there was. Like, there's so many things that you can do with it. You can show them relics, you can show them like all these ancient videos, all these like video games. You can make it fun. It's like it's a story that actually happened. Like, it's a fantasy that actually happened, and you can make it real. Like, I could wear a costume, I could wear different hats. Like, it's such a fun subject that you could play around with. Like, I could wear a typical Viking hat with the horns and then tell them how that's all garbage and that never really happened and the Vikings never had horns on their hats. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen it too many times, because I currently work in education as well, where history is just made so boring and so bland and so blah. Like, the current history teacher that I'm sitting in classes with now, I'm a TA. I'm not an actual teacher, but I am an educator, because I also mentor students, and I lead these little clubs where students can come in and talk about their feelings. Like, that's me. That's just the kind of thing that I like doing. And the history classes that I'm currently sitting in, he puts a book in front of the students, he stares at the board, and he says, read here to here, and then we'll all discuss it as a class. And I'm just like, you're talking about Nazi Germany. There's so many things that you could do to really awaken that subject for students, because it's not such a long time ago. I don't think it's that difficult to make students feel how horrible those times were for people. Like, a lot of the, and I can speak about this from experience, because when I was studying it in school, I absolutely hated it. Because it was just so boring, and there's just so many elements that you can talk about. Like, I was so bored with the lessons, and my school was fairly bad, but I don't see much of a difference in other schools. But like, it's such a boring lesson that I just went ahead and I bought Mein Kampf and I read the whole thing. Like, I think it's really saying something when you can buy a book written by a tyrannical dictator, and it's more interesting than your actual history lessons. Like, and Hitler's not an inspiring writer. He's not a very good writer, and I believe he didn't even really write that book, because there's accounts saying that it was ghost written for him. And he's not a very prolific or interesting writer, and yet it was still more interesting than I'm getting angry, than my actual history lessons, and I find that really pathetic. So I'm actually kind of glad that my history A level that was about Anglo-Saxons and Vikings was just done by me. Like, I did all of that, and I was fully engaged in it. I bought all the books that I needed. I read through all of Lord of the Rings because it was an excuse to read it, because Tolkien was he was a professor of Anglo-Saxon in Oxford University, so I read a lot of his material, and I got into the series Vikings. It was originally a History Channel series. I don't know what it is now, and I'm still watching it, and I still don't know what it is, but it's on Amazon Prime, so that's where I watch it. So yeah, I made all this material, especially when talking about the sack of Lindisfarne, which is a very significant point in that history, where the Vikings start attacking British shores, and the Anglo-Saxons weren't expecting it, and the Vikings didn't know they were going to hit anything, because at that point they had never sailed west. Or people had, and they'd just gotten lost at sea. And they would normally just, they were a raiding kind of people. Like, that's what even Viking means. It means raider. So that was the kind of people they were, but they only ever raided east because they knew there was land there. And when they first started raiding west, they didn't know they were going to find anything. So the sack of Lindisfarne, which is a monastery on the island Lindisfarne, was a very significant moment for both communities, because Vikings found out that there was this community of people who put all their gold in a chamber guarded by virgins who didn't know how to fight. They found that out, and the Anglo-Saxons realized, oh, there's a threat to the east that's coming and raiding our shores and sacking all our religious and holy places. So I wrote an entire short story about that, and like, I have it on my computer. It won a writing competition, and I was exceptionally proud of it. It was a piece of work that I was really, really proud of, because I had written it from the perspective of an Anglo-Saxon monk who had been raided. And then he grows up to take revenge or whatever. And I think it was called Blood Will Have Blood, which is a Shakespeare quote, and I was a big Shakespeare fucking nerd. But also, after the Vikings started sacking, after some time, there was, they inherited some land. They started, they started like building, and I think with the Vikings, I have an affinity towards them. Like, I understand them, and to an extent I try to mimic the way that they live. Obviously not the raiding and pillaging and raping part, but they had a very stoic sense of living. Like, even the way that they had very cruel gods to begin with. Like, I think that when you look at Greek myths and you look at Roman myths, you see a shift in the nature of the gods, even though if you look at them, they're the same gods, Jupiter and Zeus and all of that stuff. Like, it's the same gods, but you see a significant shift in character. The Greek gods were a lot more human, were a lot more closer to nature, I think. And when you move them to the Roman gods, you see that they become a lot more militarized, they become a lot more cruel. And the Viking gods were very much a reflection of the people. They were extremely savage. They were very cruel gods who demanded penance. Even their concept of paradise was completely imperfect. And for those of you who watched my review of Messiah, you'll know that I love imperfection in everything. I think that it really speaks to human nature and the way that we interpret things. And their gods are extremely imperfect, and their paradise is extremely imperfect. The highest level, Odin's Hall, Valhalla, which is, every Viking warrior's dream to reach, was imperfect. Like, they would fight all day, and they would feast and it's not even that they would fight, it's them training for the end of the world, because that's Odin's army at the end times. And they would fight and kill each other, and they would be remade, and they would feast in the evening, and it's just like this for me, it makes all the hairs on my body rise. Like, for me, that seems like such an interesting idea for what you would want your heaven to be. Because when you look at Judeo-Christian interpretations of paradise, it's just, rivers, and you can have anything you want, and you'll have servant boys and virgins and whatever. But that's very, very different from these polytheistic interpretations. Even with Greek myths, you have Elysium, which is a field reserved for heroes. And this idea that you had to be a hero and you had to preserve your immortality in stories was also something that was very beautiful to me. And in a sense, I want that. Like, I want to be remembered after I die, and I want to be remembered as, maybe not as a hero, but as someone who made an impact on the world. And I want my name to be in everyone's houses, like things like that. And there's honestly just two ways of doing that: by being a wonderful human being, or being a very cruel and terrible and awful human being. And I have been on record saying that it can go either way for me. And I don't want it to go either way for me. I want to be the good human being. So please give me the opportunity to be a good human being. BBR says, petition to change this into a history channel. You know what? If you make it a thing and you give me the funding and I buy all the costumes, I will make this a history channel. But I really want to bust out those old presentations, those old lesson plans that I made for myself. Like, I have maps, I have activities that I would do for myself, I had creative writing tasks. Like, if y'all want this, I'll do it, because I have this amazing love for history. And if I'm being completely honest, I've never been into like Eastern history very much. I love their myths. I love Hindu myths. I read through all of Rigved. Okay, they have this. So with all of these mythologies, and I am going to call them mythologies because that's what they are. They're not religions, they're mythologies. With all of these mythologies, the one thing that I always find really interesting is how the gods came into being, like how they started. With the Greek gods, it was a case of Cronus trying to stop. So it wasn't even a case of Cronus. It was a case of Cronus's parents being really, really awful, and then him turning into an awful parent. But it was then him trying to stave off the prophecy of his own children rebelling against him and taking over and being, the Olympians, like Cronus was a titan or whatever. And then you have the Norse mythology of there being giants and, the clouds being made of a giant's brains. And it's just really, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's not wonderful, but it's also not awful. It's extremely fascinating, and I've always been invested in that. And the Hindu mythology has a lot of demons in it. And there's like a king of demons, and I remember why I got into it. It was because of this manga I was reading, and it's called RG Veda. It was based on the Rig Veda, and it was one of the first mangas that I picked up. It was the first thing that I got into in terms of that world, because I'd always been into anime, but it was always like these happy, laughy kind of animes. Like, they weren't these, like, right now I'm really into dark, heavy animes. Like, that's the kind of thing that I like. It's the kind of stories that I like. Like, I like feeling something for my characters. Like, when they die, I don't want to just be like, ha, they died. I want to be like, oh no, they died. Like, I'm never going to see that character again. All I have is these like portrayals of them, and there's no more of that. Like, that's what I want to feel for characters. If that's like messed up, let me know. But that's what I feel for characters when I watch these like dark fantasies or these like historical like period dramas and things like that. Hi everybody. I'm sorry, I'm like half ignoring you. Welcome British Pakistani Atheists, welcome BBR, welcome Susie Bennett, welcome Blue Collar Heathen. We're just talking about different things for the channel, and we're in the moment we're talking about history and mythology, and this is what I want to do. I want to start doing some history lessons or some mythology lessons, but I haven't really studied Eastern history very much. And it would not only be me like busting open my old PowerPoints and my old lesson plans and presenting history. It would also be a deep dive into other kinds of histories, because many times I've been offered to, let's go into Mongolian history, and I'm just like, but I don't care about that. But I'm sure they have, because I'm very, very into tribal histories and histories that don't have a lot of written things. Like with Vikings, the reason why there's a lot of mystery around them is because the only things that are recorded about them are by the Anglo-Saxons, which is often why they're portrayed as villains. It was first recorded by someone called the Venerable Bede, who was like a fourth or fifth century historian, and he recorded all these things. And it's thought that the reason why Vikings were portrayed with having horns on their helmets was so they reflected the devil, and they were considered to be otherworldly. And then there's like a whole other archaeological, historical sort of basis for whether or not horns were evil, because there's a statue of Moses that was built in the Renaissance period that he has horns, and no one knows why. And it's thought that horns were just meant to symbolize something supernatural or otherworldly, and that's how Vikings were seen, because they used to sail up in these beautifully carved boats with these and they came with all their dragon stories and all their Germanic traditions, and people just thought of them as like, this is crazy, like who are these people that came from this other world and is just killing and raping all our people and stealing all our people for slaves and taking all our gold. And it's like all that mystery built around them is just so wonderful. Another thing that I studied in my own free time, it wasn't even a module that I had, was pirates. Like I love pirate lore and the different things that they did, like the societies that they created. And the reason I got into that was because I got really into Assassin's Creed Black Flag, like more than I should have. I wrote a whole musical that will never see the light of day. I wrote an entire musical, I'm not joking, because I was just so invested in that world, because there's just so much mystery and so much wonder built around pirates. And yes, they are horrible people, again, with the raping and the pillaging. I feel like this is a theme, but the raping and the pillaging was definitely something that pirates did, but with the legends that came about them, like the way that Blackbeard died, like there's a legend about him that when they cut off his head, like he was so like demonic and satanic that his head like circled around the ship that he was beheaded on 3 times and then it sank, and that when people saw him, he built this image of terror and brutality, that he would make his beard like it would smoke and things like that, and he would mix gunpowder with his rum and he would drink it. And it was just like, I would love to do that. Like I would love to just I'm already like getting excited about it, and it's not even something that I've decided I'm doing. I had 2 pirate hats. I left them in my old house because I only took essentials with me, but it was just wonderful and amazing, and I want to go back to that. And also, it's not going to be a professional history lesson. Because I work in a school, I see a lot of material that teachers use with YouTube, and it's just like these boring people in like suits who are just like pointing at shit that appear on the board. Like, you could have done that by yourself. Like, we're in school, you could have done that yourself. Like, this is doubly lazy. It's going to be an unfiltered history class. Like, if something is ridiculous, like one thing that I will never, like, someone's been arguing with me on my YouTube channel as if they have the right to tell me that Henry VIII was somewhat useful. He is the most useless, most selfish, most irresponsible king of England that I have ever studied. And I had to study him for a module that I was learning by myself. I had to take an exam on him. I cannot tell you how angry he makes me, and even there, like, I enjoy that. The fact that a character in history can make me as angry as he did. Like, I'm just, every time I'm looking at this textbook, I'm just unmovedly angry. I'm just looking at him and I'm just like, why did anyone put up with your bullshit? Like, why did no one just come into your home and stab the ever-living fuck out of you? Like, I don't understand. This is what I mean. Like, I want it to be unfiltered. Like, I want pure rage to just seethe through the screen about the history that I'm telling, because I think Henry VIII is known for 2 things when you learn him at like a very primary level. He's known for his 6 wives, and he's known for breaking off from church and state. And creating his own church and breaking off from the Catholic Church, which on the face of it is not a bad thing. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, he broke off from the Catholic Church, that's a good thing. But you don't understand. His motivation for doing it was so selfish and so stupid. Like, all of his advisors were completely against it because it was such a poor decision for the time. And like, then he got his divorce, and then he beheaded the wife that he married. Like, it's so annoying. It's so fucking annoying. And then, like, on his deathbed, instead of making the right decisions, and also the Church of England isn't that different from the Catholic Church. It's like in one or two ways different. Like, it's not connected to the Catholic Church, and it allows you to get a divorce. Like, that is it. Like, that is the basis of the difference. The rest of it is fine. You still do the Eucharist. You still do, like, all these other Catholic things. It's not that different. Like, I don't understand why people see it as a good thing. It's not. It just weakened England's position. It allowed just Henry VIII to do what the Vikings didn't do and rob all the monasteries of their money to fund his just fruitless wars, so he could take over 2 French cities and lose them by the end of his reign. It annoys me, is all I'm saying. And then he left his heir, who was a sickly boy. He left his heir with almost nothing. Like, the country was almost bankrupt. Both of his, like, the advisors were fighting for dominance over this child who was like 9 years old when he came into power, and then subsequently died when he turned 14. Like, it was a fuck show, especially since Henry VIII's father, Henry VII, had won the War of the Roses, had created peace in England, and then Henry had just built this cocktail of disaster to bring his entire country back into civil war. Like, I hate it. I hate it. I hate him, and I just want to rant about him on a YouTube channel and let it be a testament for the time. Like, I don't understand why he's celebrated. I don't understand why people talk about him. He should be a name like Voldemort, but instead of it incurring fear, it should just incur disgust, because he's such a useless king. He's such a useless king. Like, before studying Henry VIII, I thought the most useless king was Edward the Confessor, because Edward the Confessor, the reason why he's called the Confessor is because he didn't appoint an heir, because he didn't have one. He was a celibate king, which is like the most stupid thing you can do as a king, is not leave an heir, because it leaves your country in a state of disarray unless you clearly appoint an heir. And it's thought that he appointed William the Conqueror, who was a Norman. He was the next king. He was William the Conqueror. I mean, he conquered England. He was a French king. And it's thought that he had appointed him, but because there were other things at work, like there was this powerful Lord of Wessex who was Harold Godwinson, I believe. Harold Godwinson, those two created a fucking battle, and then there was Harold Hardrada, who was a Viking, who also wanted England, and then there was like 5 different people competing for the throne, because Edward the fucking Confessor would not leave a male heir, or any kind of heir for that matter. It was just like, oh, I'm married to, I don't even know, Edith Swan Neck or some shit, right? I'm married, but I took this vow of celibacy, so I'm not going to leave an heir and leave my country in complete disarray. Like, these fucking kings, I'm so glad that we don't have that system really anymore. Like, we have a queen, but she is more like a tourist attraction. Like, I thought that he was the most useless until I studied Henry VIII, and I was like, how did nobody just murder you in your sleep? Like, you had 6 wives and none of them thought to strangle you to a bedpost. Like, you are the most useless, selfish, fat fuck in history, and somehow we still celebrate you. And everyone knows your name. Why? You should be buried in the chassis of history. Like, we have other kings, like Richard III, who was he was a warrior king. He fought in the Crusade, and like, we're not going to talk about the Crusade here, because honestly that's a whole other can of worms, especially since there's still war in that area for whatever reason. But he's a celebrated king. Nobody fucking talks about him. Like, I think that there's something to talk about there, especially with the Robin Hood myths, which we can go over. Like, I love that whole, the whole mystery around Robin Hood, again, is amazing. The whole mystery around King Arthur and his, like, round table or whatever the hell. Like, that stuff is really, really interesting. All these, like, epics about Beowulf and all of that stuff, super interesting. But nobody fucking talks about that. We talk about these disaster kings. Like, you know, the four Georges, they're really super interesting because they're just consecutively, there's four Georges, like all in a fucking row. One of them was out of his fucking mind, and he was the longest reigning king before Queen Victoria. He was the longest reigning monarch, because his reign was like 60 years long, and his son was a regent for the longest time, and then he was only king for like 10 years. It's hysterical. It's just like these cruel, chaotic, universal jokes, and it's like this bastion. There's so many stories to tell, and it's so interesting. But why are history lessons so boring? Why? I don't understand. Like, I would be so animated in teaching these things, and every single history teacher that comes to my notice is just like this walking wraith who just walks into class with their striped tie and their white shirt and their stupid hair, and they point at a board and they're like, so Hitler, he was a bad man. Let's move on. No, talk about it. Like, what do you mean he was a bad man? What did he do? Like, talk about the Night of the Long Knives. Talk about the concentration camps. Talk about Menge, that fucking psycho who was obsessed with twins and would sew them together. Like, talk about that. It's like, maybe it's not appropriate content for a child. I'm realizing that, but it's like so uninteresting. Like, how are these children supposed to understand the horror of the concentration camps if you're not going to talk about the horror of the concentration? I'm sorry, am I getting too angry? I can't tell. But how are they meant to understand how horrible it is if you don't like explain how horrible it is? Like, how can you just be like, oh yeah, they were sent to concentration camps with gypsies and gays and bisexuals and trannies and like all these people, and just move on? Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you not sit there and be like, you know who we can really learn from? Anne Frank. You know what movie we can watch? Schindler's List, Sophie's Choice. Like, let's... I'm so angry. Because, like, when it comes to English and we read these... And also, English is another one. Like, why don't we study fantasies in English? Why do we always study these, like, awful... just like these boring, plain, like the hills were green fucking writers? Like, why do we not go into English and we study the lay of the land? You know what I'm saying? Like, 1984, one of my favorite books of all time. It is one of my favorite books of all fucking time, and I didn't get to study in English. What did I study? I studied Pride and fucking Prejudice. Why? So I can learn that women were pathetic and men were bland as cardboard? Like, yeah, she was a female writer, and that was unusual for the time. But you know who else we could have studied? Mary fucking Shelley. She wrote Frankenstein, which is a way better story than Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility and Emma. Like, fuck those books. Like, honestly, like, I appreciate your struggle, Jane Austen. I appreciate your fucking struggle, and I appreciate that it was really hard at the time to get published as a woman. But you know fucking what? I don't like your fucking stories. Mary Shelley, I can rate 100%. Like, there were other, like, you know which book I really like that no one in my English class got, and no one of my friends who read literature understand. I love Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy or Tom Hardy? I used to call him Tom Hardy because that's how casual I was with him. I love his stories because he writes these really sad pictures of stupid people. So one of the books that I studied in English for A-level, like, it wasn't even for GCSE, it was for A-level, it had to be a personal choice to study it, was Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And a lot of people are like, why would you like that story? That story is so awful and so terrible, and Tess just makes you angry. But this is why I like it. The reason I like, I'm going to put my laptop down because I will throw it. The reason why I like Tess of the D'Urbervilles as a novel is because it follows this stupid fucking farmyard girl who makes all these horrible decisions for her life, and you as a person cannot sympathize with her because she's a fucking moron, and no one in her world will sympathize with her because she's a fucking moron. And it makes you think, like, the church doesn't care about her, the rich people don't care about her, her family doesn't give a fuck about her, and she's just dumb. Like that's her vice. Like she's just a moron, and not no one sympathizes with her. Like I don't want to give out spoilers, but it is a fucking classic, so you can tune out. But like at one point, like really early in the story, she loses a baby. She loses a baby, and the church will not baptize her child before like she knows it's gonna die, and the church refuses to baptize her child because it's a bastard, because she got pregnant out of wedlock, and it's just such a sad moment, and I can feel nothing but contempt for this woman who is crying over her child. Like, it makes you reflect as a human being, and I personally think that's what Thomas Hardy was going for when he was writing this story, because it also has a sad ending. A lot of shit goes on. She ends up killing someone. But like it makes you reflect as a human being, not only at the time, like how harsh Victorian society was, like this unfeeling church, this unfeeling society, and this like change from this rural life to industrializing everything, and the world is completely changed. Like life is completely different, and nobody gives a fuck. Like it really makes you reflect not only on the time, but also as a person. Like you can't feel sympathy for a human being who has lost her child, who has fallen on hard times, has to do all this hard manual labor, you know, has all these human things that we feel. Like she falls in love and dumb shit like that. Like we can't feel sympathy, and we can't feel for that character. Like it really, like I read that story and I couldn't believe how angry I was at this fictional character who someone probably did live that life, and I just couldn't believe how angry I was at her when she just did what normal human beings do when they don't know what to do. And that's what I want to reflect on. Like nobody understands that. Nobody understands why I love that book. Like it's one of the things that completely changed me. Like I'm a really hard person. Like I'm a really cold person that I can't just feel sympathy for. It really opened up empathy in me. Like I was like, I should feel really bad for her. Like she lost a child, she's in love with this human being, but she can't. And also at that time I didn't really understand what love was. I didn't have a loving family, and I'd never experienced love personally. So for me, it was like, this is dumb. Like, why are you falling for these idiot men who are ruining your life? Because they can get away with anything. In this world, you can't get away with anything. You're a woman. But it really opened that up for me, and it really changed me as a person. Never thought I'd say Tess of the D'Urbervilles changed me as a person, but here we fucking are. Like, it really did. And like, we can't, I feel like things like that in literature are glossed over. Like we sit there and we analyze things, and we do stupid shit. Like one of my students had to prove that Shakespeare was a feminist, and I was like, he absolutely fucking wasn't. It was the 16th century. No one was a feminist. But like we're made to analyze this dumb shit. Like Shakespeare was a feminist, argue this point, and you can easily do that. You can argue both sides really easily, because that's what English teaches you to do. It just teaches you to be extremely misleading and lie, and that's how you win an exam. That's how you win an essay. That's what you do. But instead of doing that, why don't we reflect on the things and the parables that people are trying to tell us? Like, why don't we do that? I want to do that, because it really changed me. Like I went back, and I rarely read books over again. I read that book over, I must have been 5 or 6 times, and it was just to read it. Like it wasn't for education. It was just to read it and like to fully understand why I felt so like apathetic towards this poor, tragic human being who went through all these struggles. Like I went through all the struggles that I went through. Like imagine me reading my own life and feeling nothing. It's fucked up. Like we as human beings shouldn't be like that. We should feel empathetic towards people who just don't know what to do in a situation that is completely stacked up against them. Like not even the church will have mercy on you. I mean, it's probably not that unbelievable in an atheist community, but at that time, that was the only source of compassion that I would think to go to, you know? Like, Father, I'm going through this thing, help me. Like, that's the only thing that I can think of, especially in a Victorian society where people weren't very giving, and there was this race to become the biggest and the best, and there was this huge divide between rich and poor, and there was a lot of commentary on that. Like Dickens did a lot of commentary on that. A lot of romantic writers in the Victorian era did a lot of commentary on how far the divide was between rich and poor, and how unfeeling and uncaring people were at the time. Sorry, I feel like this has become something else. So yeah, it's just, and like other writers like Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Miserables, which is a wonderful Broadway musical now. I don't know why, it's a really sad story, but he wrote on that commentary where, you know, Fantine goes through all these different phases of poverty where she has to, you know, shave her head, and she has to take out her teeth to sell them. Like, that's what Victorian era was. That's how poor people were. And I think that story is set in a completely different time. It's set in the French Revolution, but you know, the human struggle of not knowing what to do and doing what you have to survive is very much there, and doing the things that you do for the people you love is very much there. And we don't reflect on those things. We instead reflect on dumb shit like, compare this character and why they're volatile. Like, it's one of the reasons why I enjoy Shakespeare, because he covers all these like universal things. Yes, the writing is a little difficult to get past, but as someone who read the whole of Canterbury Tales in Old English, it's not that big a deal for me. Like, Shakespeare is a walk in the park compared to Canterbury Tales, and Canterbury Tales has some good fucking stories. Like, let's not get it twisted. Some of them are dumb, like The Miller's Tale. Don't understand why that's a tale. It just feels like a filler story that he put in for his publisher. But The Knight's Tale and a couple of other ones that I've forgotten now, but I really enjoyed when I was reading them while laboriously going through the language, is really inspiring. But one of the reasons why I really enjoy Shakespeare, and Shakespeare is another thing that I want to do on my channel. Like, I want to do like literature unfiltered, and I want to do history unfiltered, because they kind of go together. But the reason why I love Shakespeare is because he has all these universal themes, like and they stick out. Like one that a lot of students study in like in GCSE level or middle school level is Macbeth, because Macbeth is about revenge and ambition, and, you know, self-fulfilling prophecies, and there's all these things, and there's so many things that you can look at there and think, like, this is what human nature does, and this is what human nature, like, this is the stages that you go through. And he's considered a tragic hero. I personally wouldn't call him that, and Macbeth isn't like a Shakespearean character that I look up to a lot, but one that really resonates with me, and this is going to come to as a surprise to nobody, is Hamlet. Like, Hamlet has all these really teenage struggles. Like, he loses his father, and, you know, he has all these different emotions. He's grieving, you know, his uncle does this big betrayal of him, and there's an element of revenge there as well, but there's also like suicidal thoughts and mental health, and there's like unrequited love. Like, there's all these emotions that people go through, and like, I feel as though Shakespeare portrays very well. In Merchant of Venice, you have, you know, a Jewish character who says, "If you cut me, do I not bleed?" Like, there's no denying that Shakespeare was an anti-Semite, and let's be real, everyone was at that time, because it was the 16th fucking century. Everybody was killing everybody. But he draws these really interesting parables between different types of people, between men and women, you know, in Othello, jealousy, between, you know, dark-skinned people, light-skinned people, Jews, non-Jews, you know, the way that people treated other people. And he really shines a light on struggles that we still go through. And that's why he's still studied, and that's why I still think he's important, and that's why his name is still fucking everywhere, you know? Again, with the name being a way of being immortal, is that your name just carries through history. And it's important to some people, and, you know, some people don't care about it. They have kids. That's their way of being immortal. I'm sorry, I'm tired of people telling me that I need to have a kid when I don't. That's another thing. But yeah, I mean, this is my brainstorming session, but I kind of know what I want to do. Like, I want to do history lessons, like curate them, put up some like maps on my walls so I can like just point to them and be like, this thing. We could do a whole like lesson on just torture and the way that Christian England tortured people for different things. Like, y'all look at Sharia and think it's terrible. Wait until you meet medieval torture equipment. It's fucking brutal. It's disgusting and it's horrible, but fascinating as a historical element and something that actually happened a long time ago. I don't know if you guys have questions. I feel like you do because I've said a lot of horrible things in the last hour, but I am going to time out pretty soon because I'm going to go meet Sahel. He's going to be here in London for a short while, so I need to go and see him before he flies back to his country, and I miss him forever. So if you have any questions, I'm just going to go through the chat and see what you guys have been saying. And if you have any questions, please let me know. So welcome everybody. It seems to be a pretty positive response to history and literature, so I'm glad for that. We have Shane Wilson, we have Thomas, we have Stu Brunts. Welcome. Sorry, yeah, I swear a lot. That's just my moniker. That's how I've always been. I have a lot of anger, and I need to express it appropriately, and I think that there's more value in that than people know. Or want to understand. So BBR says, your descriptions of history would definitely put life into it for me. My history lessons usually make me snooze and I forget what I've learned after a day or two. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand why history teachers are like that. I hate it. Genuinely, I hate it. Like, I just want it to be just a little bit more animated than I'm not even asking for people to be jumping and bouncing around the class like I would in a history class, but just to talk about it. Just talk about the history. Like, I'm not telling you to sit there and analyze like all these postscripts and all that stuff. Like, yeah, you'll do that in the exam and we can go over that later, but like, talk about the actual history. Make me feel something for these characters that you're talking about. Mary Shelley was amazing. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was amazing, and honestly, I need to look into more of her work because she's a magnificent writer. And I believe that Frankenstein is an epistolary, right? Epistemology? No. What is it called where like a book is written all in like letters and diary entries, and it's no like actual prose, it's just diary entries and letters, but I think it's written like that, and Bram Stoker's Dracula is written like that, and I remember really enjoying it, but honestly I don't remember any of that story, and it's too big a book for me to read it again. But yeah, British Pakistani atheist says, if you get the chance to watch Star Trek Discovery on Netflix, it is epic. There's a very significant reason why I can't watch Star Wars. It's because my father really enjoyed Star Wars, and while there are happy memories there, there's also a lot of not very happy memories for me, so I've just been avoiding Star Wars, but who knows, maybe I'll get back into it someday. So yeah, at the moment, I'm not watching any series because, as we've stated before, I'm a binger when it comes to TV shows. I just like knowing what happens. So I typically stay away from TV shows throughout the year, and I just binge watch all of them around Christmas, and I usually meet my target because I have nothing to do in Christmas. It's 2 weeks of me just sitting around doing nothing because everyone has plans and I'm alone. So yeah, so that's when I do it. But you know what? Maybe I'll just save up and watch it around Christmas. I don't know. Blue Collar Heathen says, Frankenstein was written as a bet with Bram Stoker. I can understand that because they're written in the same way. They are of the same genre. They're gothic fiction. And they were both written in the Victorian times. I don't think Bram Stoker's Dracula was as popular because he was Irish. I think that factors in quite a bit, especially Victorian times. But I would say that Frankenstein is better written than Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, I love Dracula. I think that it's a really good book. I don't remember anything about it. All I remember is vague descriptions of Count Dracula and his brides. But I think that Frankenstein is better written. I think it's a better portrayal of humans and the way humans are. So yeah. Do I have an opinion on Arthur Machen? What did he write? I don't think I'm aware of Arthur Machen. I'm just Googling him. Arthur Llewellyn-Jones, a Welsh author. Oh, I haven't. He writes influential supernatural fantasy and horror fiction. Oh, see, like, I feel like I missed out on this because I was never pushed to read these. I was always pushed to read like these grey Victorian romances, so I like missed out on fantasy. Another one that I completely missed out on was H.P. Lovecraft. I still haven't read any of his work. Um, and like now you talking about it makes me want to read it. Like Three Imposters, Great God Pan, and Inmost Light. I'm gonna put that on a list because I want to read that. I ended up reading a lot of Orwellian fiction. I read Burmese Days. I read 1984 Animal Farm and a few others. And I have a real love for Orwell's work because it really speaks to me and the situation that I'm in, and the need to hide things and things like that. And I don't know, I think that arts and literature and speculating things is just really underappreciated in like a skeptic community. Like every time I bring it up, everybody just makes stupid farting noises and acts like I'm irrelevant because nobody, like in my circle, very few people have read literature and enjoy history. So when I start talking about it, yeah, it's called an epistolary. Yeah, I thought epistemology was a philosophy thing. Thank you, BB. So when I start talking about it, it's just like no one relates, and that's what I kind of miss about being in a fully religious class, because I feel like there's less cold hard facts there. There's more room for like opinions and talking about other things. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like it's undervalued and underappreciated. Like I went to a meeting on Tuesday, and it was like this. It was like this action meeting for CEMB, or the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, and it was a meeting to like structure in some actions for throughout the year. And their main theme for this year is shunning. We want to do a lot of protests around shunning, which I'm very much personally involved in right now. And I was coming up with all these ideas and making comparisons between A and B. And it was all these artistic things like street performances and interpretive dance. And while I don't think interpretive dance is particularly influential, I do think that if done right, it can have an impact. And poetry anthologies and poetry readings and short stories. And everyone else is like, oh, we could just take our placards. And like, yeah, that's effective. But I also think that you need to appeal to the human in people. And that's what I want to do, and that's why I'm heading a lot of projects with them. And honestly, it's quite stressful, but I know I'll feel good after the fact, because I do really think that while cold hard facts do affect people and move people in a direction, I think that there needs to be some heart to it, and you need to appeal to the human and the empathy in people for people to actually want to change. And you just can't achieve that with just plain science. You know what I'm saying? So I think that I think that I need to personally contribute, like throw my artistic ring in the hat and just do that, like move in that direction. And I just hate that, for example, anytime we have one of these days, like Blasphemy Day or No Hijab Day, which I will be participating in this year, or something like that, or the Awesome Without Allah campaign, people were just making lists, and I was like, no, you know what, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna cry. Like, this is gonna appeal to people. Like, this is gonna I want to strike people's hearts, and I really do feel like I did with a lot of those things, and I want to continue doing that. But every time I like brainstorm an idea like that, people are just sitting, like my contemporaries or people that my colleagues who do the same thing with me are sitting around like, what are you talking about? Like, it's not that deep. But it is that deep. It for me it is. Like, I want it to be an artistic journey. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's just the ramblings of an artist and someone who's too cool for school. But I'm completely serious. Like, I do think that arts are underappreciated, and I want to do it more. Like, I want to collaborate with a few more of my ex-Muslim friends, and I want to do like little art projects. Like, I think that an exercise that a lot of artists do, or in art classes actually, is that you do like a blind drawing of someone. And you can interpret a lot of things about your psyche and how you feel about that person from the way that you draw them, without looking at the page and just like looking at their face and letting your hand guide your pen. And often you also are not allowed to take the pen off the page. And and it, it's a reflection of the way that your brain maps faces as it translates to your muscles, and also a reflection of how you view that person that you're drawing. And I just think that it would be a really cool experiment. Like, it doesn't have to be based around religion. Like, fuck religion, we've left that behind. Like, let's do something else and let's explore ourselves and find ourselves. Like, it's fun to me. And yeah, sometimes it's an epiphany that breaks you, but we move past that. We're stoic, we're Vikings. We move on and we carry on and we do other things. So yeah, that's what I want to do. That's my vision for my channel. If anyone has any other, I know I didn't really give room for people to make suggestions, but if anyone has suggestions, please let me know. I'm probably going to close off, throw on some makeup so I can go and see Sahel, who is Reason on Faith on Twitter and on YouTube. He hasn't released any content recently, but the content he does have up is bomb. The sound quality is amazing. The video quality is amazing. It's perfectly edited. He's a perfect human being. The man is past middle age, let's just say that, and he looks like he's in his 20s. He's an Adonis of a human being, and you need to go and check out his content. Let me go and find his channel so that I can just plug it here. This is not a sponsored video. You just need to go and check him out. But he's going to be in London. He's like my uncle. I truly consider him a family member. And I just haven't seen him since Amsterdam, which was last year August, so I really want to go and see him. But yeah, thank you for joining me in this live stream, and I hope it was enjoyable. I don't know why I get heated so quickly all of the time, but that's just me, and I hope you enjoy that. So that's his channel, if you want to go and subscribe and check out his videos. He really is, like, he did an Why I Left Islam video, and honestly, it's like an ASMR video. It's so, like, I don't like ASMR. I think that ASMR just creeps me out mostly, but when you listen to him talk, he gives you the tingles. Like, it really is such a pleasant video to watch and listen to and just enjoy. So go and check out his channel. Have fun. I am going to log off soon, so if anyone has any questions, please let me know, so that I can address them quickly and then turn off the live stream. So yeah. Oh, and I guess I should plug my own things. If you enjoyed the video, please do remember to like it. Subscribe if you want more content from me to be recommended to you, even though YouTube, like, I got recommended today a video of a cat giving birth, and yes, I did watch it, but subscribe, hit that bell. If you didn't like this video, smash that dislike button, and leave me a comment for why you absolutely fucking detest me. So yeah, if you would like to support me in a more monetary way, I have a Patreon, I have a PayPal. All of the things are linked in the description below for your viewing pleasure. We also have merch. At one point, I'm gonna have to actually get my own merch and showcase it, because your girl hasn't been getting a lot of sales, but honestly, I'm quite proud of the things that I've made. I think it is a cool design that doesn't necessarily scream I'm an atheist or I'm an ex-Muslim, but it's by an atheist ex-Muslim creator, and it's pretty cool stuff. But yeah, and if you would like something drawn for money, please do contact me through Twitter. Link is in the description. BBR says, you're telling me he's not in his 20s. No, girl, he's 20 to 30 years older than that. He looks really young, but he's not. He really isn't. He's just hit the genetic gold mine. He's beautiful for his age. Yeah, do the YouTube thingies. Thank you, Blue Collar Heathen. He's standing in as you're being the moderator for my chat. Thank you so much for doing that, because Lord knows I wasn't gonna do it. Any last questions? I'll time out in 30 seconds. Also, I'm really enjoying not being that active on Twitter. My brain is so thankful that I'm not that active on Twitter. So yeah. I'm glad you are. I need to be on your channel at some point. I don't know what we'd talk about, but we need to be on. We need to do a video together. I think that would be fun. Also, I gave you like a manuscript to read. I'm not no pressure because you have absolutely no obligation to read it. But what do you think so far? If you are still getting through it. All right, we might just time out since people are leaving and I need to go places. But for those of you who want to catch up, I'm on Twitter, so we can chat there. But for now, goodbye, and I will probably see you Wednesday, where we will be looking through more of my diary and things that I did 10 years ago. So yeah, goodbye, and I'm really sorry to hear that you wrecked your car. That's awful. That just came up for me. I'm really sorry that that happened to you. Wow, that's a lot. Are you okay? How did you wreck? Okay, I'm just gonna talk to you on Twitter. Goodbye.